Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarland. I'm your host, Al McFarland. So instead of presenting you a live program today, I'm sharing with you one of my favorite episodes, a show that shows you how we've molded the show that you've come to know and love. And while you're enjoying this show, I'm going to be working with my team to make the program even more informative, more insightful, and even more inspiring. And if you haven't already, I'd like you to show your support for the conversation with Al McFarland by subscribing to the Inside News YouTube channel. This way you'll get alerted about and never miss new episodes, show clips, and special features only available on the Inside News channel. And you can find us on YouTube at Inside News MN. To make it easier, I've got a link in the description on this video. Well, thank you again for all your support this year. I can't wait for you to see all that we are preparing for 2023. Now, my friend, sit back and enjoy this conversation with Al McFarland. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarland. Today is Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. Wednesdays, we check in what I call building wealth in the community. You may be hearing the regular seasonal sirens going off. This must be the first Wednesday of the month, so please bear with that distraction. That's the city. We talk about wealth creation, building wealth, both for individuals and for families. And today we're going to go down that path. Let me start, though, by introducing my writing partner, who I shared with my guest a few minutes before we went on air. Brenda Lau Gray joins me every day from the mountains of New Mexico. Brenda and I are kindergarten classmates. She's an author, a former educator, and a good friend. Brenda, how you doing? Good to see you, my friend.
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm great. We've got a great program today, dealing with various aspects, approaches to wealth creation. And I want to jump right in. I want to jump in because I often lead with talking about housing, owning a home, as one of the principal methods for creating wealth for Americans, or probably anybody in the world. The land, the asset. We're fortunate to have Jennifer Ho. She's the Minnesota Housing Commissioner. Jennifer, good to see you again, Commissioner. Thank you for being here. How are you doing? Good to see you again.
It's terrific to be here. Thanks so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, let's jump right in. And I'd like to start by giving our viewers and listeners an idea of Housing Commission 101, Minnesota Housing 101. Talk about your organization, your portfolio, your mission, and the objectives you have as a leader.
I run a state agency, so I'm appointed by the governor, and I basically run the state's housing bank. As the state's housing bank, we do everything from helping people who are first-time homebuyers. You can get down payment assistance through our lending partners. If you own an older home, you can get a rehab loan, maybe to help you age in place in that home, or just deal with basic health and safety things that need to be fixed up around the house. We do new construction and preservation of both single family and multifamily rental housing. And we do it in every single corner of the state. There's not a single corner of the state that doesn't have a problem with having enough housing, especially housing that's affordable to folks who make the least. And so as government, it's our job to step into that space.
What's the great history, the great story about housing and the creation of America's middle class, particularly post-World War II? How did America become as healthy and as, I think, robust as it is as a global middle class society? What do you think?
Well, I mean, Al, I don't need to say this to you, but robust for some and not so much for others, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so after World War II, the GI Bill really created some advantages for white GIs and created opportunities for home ownership. My dad's actually from Hawaii. I found out recently when I got this job, actually, that my parents bought their house in Fridley on the GI Bill, which means that they got help with down payment and they got a below market interest rate value on that home. My dad was making $2 an hour at Univac back in the day. So I think there has always been, kind of starting in that period, government kind of putting its hand into the market to intervene, and the intervention made home ownership easier for some and harder for others. And that was federal policy, reinforced locally, redlining, who could get loans and live in which communities, who got assistance from the government, and then where did the value of those homes rise the greatest. And so I think one of the things that we're taking really seriously at Minnesota Housing is that government shaped through intentional policies the inequity in home ownership, for example, that we have today. And so what is government's responsibility in trying to shape our way out of it? And so that has been definitely a centerpiece of the conversation that we've had at Minnesota Housing during my tenure.
What's the difference being made by Jennifer Holt being commissioner? What do you bring, Commissioner, to the work in terms of understanding, sensibility, and passion, and intentionality? What are you making happen because you see it as both mission and duty?
Well, I appreciate the question. It's been a very humbling 3.5 years being the commissioner during a pandemic, I'll tell you that. But I think what I brought into the role that was slightly different from my predecessors is I've been working on ending homelessness since 1999. And I've done that running a nonprofit. I've done that out in Washington, D.C. I worked for 7 years for the Obama administration. And so I think really understanding that the most egregious problems in our housing system are people who don't have one, people who are living outside. And that also is disproportionately Indigenous people, African Americans. So that housing disparities in Minnesota impact everything from who's experiencing homelessness, who's being paying half their income on rent, and who has an opportunity at home ownership. And so I think what I've asked my team is a couple things. Is that yes, we need to celebrate what we do well, but we always need to be thinking about people who are most impacted by what's happening in the housing world and who don't have access to what we do, right? And we really need to listen not only to the people that build and preserve housing. We need to listen to the people who need it, and we need to understand what they need and what they want, and be open to different types of ways of doing things and different ways of thinking about things than maybe the agency historically did.
Is it difficult to turn the tide in huge bureaucracies in state governments? I raise the question because the state is probably the biggest employer in the state. I'm guessing that. I may be wrong. Certainly the state has more assets and resources than any other single individual institution. So it's a big organization and a lot of interest, and it's complicated. How difficult is it to change things in the direction that you see as beneficial, as fulfilling the mandate of creating equality, access, and the potential of a growing and fair society? How difficult is that?
One of the things I learned when I was out at HUD, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, they seem to be like the state agency that everybody knows by their acronym. But when I was out there, is that it took a long time to make something happen. Mm-hmm. But when something happened, it had nationwide impact. Mm-hmm. And I feel that way. In a way, compared to being at HUD, being at Minnesota Housing, we're a little guy. Got 285 staff. We're a small agency compared to the big state agencies. But I think, we all know that, the arc of justice, is long, and you have to know what you're trying to do, and you have to persist. And, I think the last, 3 3/4 years that I've had the privilege of serving in this position, it's been very tough political times, and we do our work in partnership with the legislature. And so getting consensus there, I think just takes, persistence. And I think that getting through this pandemic has just put an overlay on things. But at the same time, I've been here long enough to begin to feel the impact of some of the decisions I've helped to influence on what we're doing. So in terms of investing in developers of color, to make sure that our competition process for our housing finance money, that we are helping create wealth in communities by investing in developers of color. I think we're starting to see a shift in the way our prioritizing and our competitions work to do that. I think we're doing more units than before I came for people who are making 50% or 30% of the area median income or below, as opposed to doing kind of the higher end of what's called affordable housing. And so you can see these shifts, come to play over time. And the thing about housing finance is, you make a decision one year that impacts how funding decisions get made the next year, that impacts how something gets built the year after that. So you got to have a long view in housing. You've got to have a long view. I also am lucky. I mean, I think the governor and lieutenant governor, I think when all is said and done, they're going to prove to have had the strongest track record on housing of any administration. And, and there were significant things done by my predecessors. So, so the bar was pretty high. But for me, this is a pervasive problem all across the state. We don't have enough units, period. And we don't have enough units that are affordable to folks who make the least. And we have a system that was built on intentional discrimination. And we need to find ways to reverse the impacts that has had on wealth creation in communities of color.
When you talk about systemic deprivation, marginalization, do you get pushback from that? I raise the question because I'm out here in the streets, in the community, and if you know me, you know I'm always criticizing supremacist thought or practices or policies. And sometimes you get the feeling, maybe you do, I do, that people get tired of hearing it. And I'll be more succinct, that white people get tired of hearing it and they feel like we are making things uncomfortable for them to always bring up the statistics, the data that show that problems are not new, that they have persisted, and that they are a reflection of a certain, common understanding and will that, as you said, left certain people out of it. So what kind of energy are you encountering as a person of color in a leadership position and in a position of authority? How does that look? How does it work for you?
I don't feel like I get a lot of pushback. I am very racially and ethnically mixed. I'm an out lesbian. I'm a little gender nonconforming in my attire. And it's been kind of surprising to me that and maybe it's just because I'm in my 50s, I just don't feel like I get a lot of pushback for me being me. I think what's been interesting to me in the conversation about housing is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of pushback around history. I think that there is, whether it's the Realtors Association or the builders, the cities or the legislature, I think that there is a deeper understanding of redlining and racial covenants and how we got here. And you can't overlook the data, the disparities data. So I don't get pushback on history and I don't get pushback on the facts. I think where the conversation gets interesting is what are we going to do about it?
Right.
And, I had the opportunity to carry the governor's housing budget proposal last session. It was over $1 billion for housing and homelessness, which is extraordinary, really, when you think about the traditional level of state investments in these things. And it was exciting to be able to talk about what we could do on everything from homelessness to rental housing to preservation of naturally occurring affordable housing to single family, first time home buyers and all that. It was exciting. And then it was just incredibly disappointing to come out with no deal, especially now, right?
Mhm.
I mean, a historic state surplus. The folks who are doing well are doing fine, right? And so it just seems like it's the time to invest. And I think that's where the fundamental disagreement happened in an election year at the Capitol with a divided government, Republicans controlling the Senate, Democrats controlling the House. You know, what's interesting is when I travel around the state, it doesn't matter if I'm in a red district or a blue district. Everybody tells me we need more housing.
Mhm.
And so the way to get more housing is year after year investment by the state.
Mhm.
And no time is better than now when we have this surplus and the opportunity to make these investments. And I mean, you know this as well as anybody, but if we don't get housing right, it's hard to get education right. It's hard to get healthcare right. It's hard to get jobs right. It's hard to get public safety right.
Mhm.
But when we get housing right, that creates the foundation for everything else to come together. And so I'm confident that if I have the opportunity to serve in a second term with this governor, we will come into the legislative session with a very significant proposal for investing in housing. And I hope that we can convince, a majority of legislators that it's the right thing to do. Now's the time.
Maybe you'll have the control of the Senate this time with a little luck. You know,
I don't forecast elections. I got very humbled in 16, so I'm done with that.
understand. I share with people all the time this book, and it's a book produced here in Minnesota. It's called Whiteness in Plain View by Dr. Chad Montree, who's a University of Massachusetts Lowell history department professor. And this is kind of brings us to the things you've already introduced that you can respond to, and I'll certainly ask the other commissioners that follow you to respond to it. All of it has to do with our intent of focusing on eliminating barriers to people that have been traditionally excluded. But on the liner notes, I'll read a paragraph. The notes say whiteness in plain view examines the ways white residents across Minnesota acted to intimidate, control, remove, and keep out African Americans over the course of the 19th and 20th centuries. Their methods ranged from anonymous threats, vandalism, and mob violence to restrictive housing covenants, realtor deceit, and mortgage discrimination. And they were aided by local, state, and federal government agencies, as well as openly complicit public officials. What they did was not an anomaly or an aberration in some particular place or a passing moment, but rather common and continuous. Chapter by chapter, this book shows that Minnesota's overwhelming whiteness is neither accidental nor incidental, and that racial exclusion's legacy is very much woven into our state's contemporary politics, economy, and culture. Everything he says in this book, you just said, Commissioner. And thank you for being forthright and direct in putting the topics, the issues on the table. I think back to when we first organized, and Jeffrey, who will be on earlier, remembers we were doing things about real estate and home ownership back in the, I'm not sure the year, 10, 12 years ago, promoting when opportunity in housing seemed to be really real before the big bubble and the, what was the right word for it? The extraction of wealth, the loss of Black wealth because of real estate, because of the lending policies and redlining policies and the deception of the industry. And the industry moved to, from my point of view, blame the housing crisis on Black people in the real estate business, not on policies of banks and of lenders, and not on the inability of agencies to police and manage and monitor, corruption that was kind of part of the way we did business. And so how do we get Black people that were pushed out of real estate back in with the new gusto and an ability to be in the front of leading the change and leading the effort to rebuild wealth in the Black community? We lost a lot of money. Black people in Minnesota in particular lost a lot of money. We were already way down, but we almost got wiped out. And there have been reports detailing the lack of wealth and the loss of wealth in the Black community. What do you think, Commissioner?
I mean, yes. I think, when I first got my job, the African American Leadership Forum hosted an event over at the Guthrie. I think the event was called Trust Black Women and Girls, and had an opportunity to just sit and listen to stories of in this instance, women. I remember one woman just saying, when your family owned a home and it was taken away from them through eminent domain to build a freeway, it's really hard to believe that home ownership is the right next step for you, right? Because we have disadvantaged Black homeowners in so many ways, whether through the terms of their mortgage, the value of the neighborhoods, or taking homes away to build interstates or so-called urban renewal. And I think there is discrimination alive and well in the appraisal market today and in the lending markets today. And so, I think the enforcement work of enforcing agencies is important. Fundamentally, we have a private market housing system, and it is governed by money, as opposed to being a kind of a value-based system that appreciates that everybody will succeed if they have stable housing. And so that's the thing that I think we're fundamentally up against, is that we don't have a public benefit housing system in this country. We've got a private market system that has some public patchwork from HUD, from tax policy, from the state. And so I think, but I'm really impressed. I know you have a guest coming on from BuildWealth. I mean, the work that we do in partnership with BuildWealth and that they do. The work we do with the Homeowner Alliance, where you've got people who are Black lenders or Black counselors who are also homeowners, who can help walk people through the steps. Help people who don't have credit build credit. Credit in and of itself. Racism has played through credit, and yet we use credit foundationally to qualify for a mortgage. It's so intertwined. But I think, what we do know is that there's about 60,000 households of color, if you will, in Minnesota who are renters who make enough money to buy a home. Now, home ownership is not going to be right for all of them. Everybody's got their own reasons, but people should at least understand how that math can work for them. And because when you rent, at the end of the day, all that money just goes to your landlord. But when you pay your mortgage, some of that accrues back to you. And I think that that's the piece. But I'm also in lots of conversations where people are like, don't hold up home ownership as the only way to build wealth. You can build wealth by having a rental unit you can afford, right? That helps too. And, there's a lot of talk about duplexes and threeplexes, triplexes, the opportunity to be an owner and to be a landlord, and to be able to do that. I think, cooperative ownership is another thing that we're looking at, work with the community land trusts. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be done. They just need to be done at scale, and they need to be done with intention of reaching Black communities and helping close these despicable gaps I I I just saw new data out yesterday from uh, the American Community Survey that helps us track home ownership, and Minnesota continues to have one of the highest home ownership rates in the country. And the good news is that the amount of home ownership amongst all communities of color also went up, but it only went up very incrementally for Black Minnesotans. And so that gap between Black and white households continues to be very severe. And it's just going to take a lot of partnership and a lot of intentionality and a lot of trust building and a lot of investment year after year after year to fix this.
Commissioner Jennifer Holt, thank you so much. She's the commissioner of Minnesota Housing. Stick around as long as you want to. I'll be talking to colleagues of yours, your contemporaries on the cabinet governing our state of Minnesota. Let me thank you so much, first of all. Let me bring in Alice
Well,
Roberts.
it's great to be here. I just want to say thank you, and thanks for highlighting this issue, and thank you for your questions. And I'm going to have to go out and buy that book. So thank you.
Well, please do. And then, know that you're welcome here anytime. We think that we can play a supportive role getting your vision abroad in our community. Our mission has to be to create a new narrative, a new understanding, and to give our people the vocabulary, the language that allows us to articulate a future in which we win. And thank you for being the person at the wheel directing this movement in building community. Thank you.
I'm happy to sit around if you want to have me. I'll just, I would love to hang out with your other guests.
Okay, great. Hang around. Alice Roberts Davis, good afternoon. How are you?
With you, Al, and with my friend and colleague, Commissioner Ho.
Well, I'm so lucky to have two commissioners and an assistant commissioner on the program today. We'll be talking to Tikki Brown momentarily, and then bringing someone that was referred to earlier, Jeffrey Robinson, who's with the BuildWealth Minnesota. But, let me take a minute to talk about you and to welcome you. You're the commissioner of Minnesota's Department of Administration, and you've got a dozen administrative services divisions that report to you. They include purchasing, real estate, property, fleet, risk management, demographic analysis, and continuous improvement services. You're part of the cabinet of the governor and lieutenant governor, Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan. And your focus is on making sure that this whole notion of equity and inclusivity means something in this administration and in the state of Minnesota. Before you were commissioner, you were in the department as assistant commissioner overseeing a real estate and construction project or division responsible for $2.5 billion in annual spending. And it goes on. I'll let you talk more about what you have done and what that learning curve has meant for you now that you are a leader. You've worked in corporate as well. You can talk about that as well. You're a lawyer. You're a lawyer and a journalist. So bringing a lot to this work. I wanted to start by asking you to talk about some things going on that you're doing here in North Minneapolis in the next few days, I think, October 12th. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Thanks. It's great to be back here with you again, Al. We have a lot going on at the Department of Administration, and I tell people we have really about 25 divisions because we keep growing. And I know as commissioner, I'm not allowed to play favorites, but some of my favorite divisions are our Office of Equity and Procurement and our Procurement Technical Assistance Centers. Those groups do phenomenal work with our community. They do a lot working with our small business community and also with Minnesota businesses, ensuring that they have opportunities to do contracts with state, federal, and local government. A lot of the work that the Department of Administration does is with state government agencies. And so A lot of that work doesn't get seen by Minnesotans, but what I love about our Office of Equity and Procurement and PTAC is that that's work that we are doing directly with Minnesotans, and we're out in the community every day. We do more than 100 outreach events. We do about 8,000 hours of one-to-one counseling with Minnesota business owners to help them understand how they can interact with state government and earn contracts and Minnesotans. And so something that's coming up on October 12th that we're super excited about is the I don't want to get the name of it wrong. It is called Cracking the Code, and it is State Purchasing Power and Economic Prosperity in North Minneapolis. And that'll be an event that's happening from 8:30 to noon at the UROC Center in North Minneapolis. And we'll spend time talking to both business owners who are doing business with the state, and then we'll have panelists from our agencies who will talk to anyone who's in the audience about how we're looking at business owners, how we think you need to come prepared, and give you tips on how to do business with the state as well. This is something that we've done year over year, but this will be the first time that we've been able to do it in person in a number of years. And so we're really excited about welcoming community back in person and getting an opportunity to meet business owners again. So that's what's happening on October 12th.
Cracking the Code, it's a great name. What does it imply? What does it mean? What's the thought behind that? I'll let you go.
People think that it's really complicated to do business with the state. And what we've been working on for the last 5 to 7 years is simplifying how to do business with the state, federal, and local governments. We've done a lot of work around streamlining those processes and making government contracts much more accessible. And I think we've done a tremendous job. There are a lot of people who say, oh, I've tried to do business with the state. It's not worth my time as a small business owner. If you haven't tried in the last 2 or 3 years, now is the time to try again, because we really, again, have expanded our team from less than 1 FTE. We now have 11 people on the PTAC side and 6 people on the OEP side who are there working with business owners to ensure that you have the opportunities available to you to grow your businesses. And you don't have to take it from me. If you come to the event, you'll hear it directly from Minnesota business owners who are making great strides and really growing their businesses.
I made reference to a report that I can't remember the author of the report, but it was a public report about state spending with minority businesses and Black businesses in particular. And if I remember correctly, at that time, the state was kind of taking some credit for moving purchases with Black businesses from in the hundreds of thousands up to $1 or $2 million. It was really an embarrassment for the state, I believe, and for our business community. Where do we stand now? How much real progress has been made? Are you reporting out in terms of the state's intent and capacity and results in moving more money into Black communities through purchasing and businesses?
We still have a lot of work to do, Al. There's no question about that. The report that you're talking about had us at $119,000 with Black-owned businesses. Today, we're at about $6 million. So definitely not where we want to be, but you can see that the momentum is there and that the effort is there, and that I feel like we have found the right levers to pull in order to make that real progress that we need to see. We just need more Black-owned businesses, which is why we continue to do the outreach. We only have about 300 certified businesses. And what I want to also make sure that we're clear about is that when we're talking about the spend, we're only talking about small certified businesses. So there is more spend that's happening with Black-owned businesses, but we're only talking about those that are small and that have gone through our state certification process. So we want to ensure that we get as many businesses as we can into the state certification process so that we can make them eligible for those specific programs that are intended for the growth and that spend that we're talking about. I also want to say that we have grown the spend to over $150 million across the entire program, which is more than double than where we were this time just 6 years ago. And so a lot of progress there. And with a ship as large as the state of Minnesota, that kind of progress just doesn't happen without a whole lot of concerted effort and a lot of unity across the state enterprise to make that work happen.
All things being equal, Commissioner, if we were able to say that we've met all of our goals and have everything working the way we envisioned it could and should work, reflecting equity, access, unfettered participation, and full utilization of systems of support, what would that look like? How much would the state be spending with minority business in general, with Black businesses in particular? And I raised the question because back in the day when we'd have community meetings about this, particularly around construction, there was an argument that sought to illustrate the loss of wealth, loss of income, loss of opportunity, that said if the state had a goal of, say, 25 or 35% participation by minority businesses in highway construction, for example, and that the spend that year is going to be $1 billion, but the state only achieved 5% or 7%, it meant that 20% of our money was being left and spent by somebody else. So that logic helped people visualize, number one, the fact that we could be doing more, we should be doing more, and raise the question, why aren't we doing more? Is it us? Is it them? Is it all of us together? How do you address that? And how do you, again, the first part of the question, what would it be like if everything was working and if we had the, this machine fine-tuned and well-oiled and steaming into the future, the model of equity and inclusion? How would that look?
Periodically, the state undergoes a disparity study, and it's not something that we do because we don't know or we're not sure if there are disparities in the state. We are sure that there are disparities in spending in the state, but we do it so that we have the legal and statutory basis that we need to continue the programs that we have in the state. The last time that we undertook a disparity study was 2017, and we did ask the legislature for money last year so that we could do a fresh disparity study. We didn't get that, but the we undertook led us to set the state's first goal ever for spending, and that goal was 12%. Right now, the state is at about 8% overall for spending, which is the reason why that I say that we are not where we need to be with spending. Mm-hmm. We continue to work toward that 12% goal. At the same time, we are at $150 million overall in spend, which again is double where we were when we first started. And those are real dollars that are going into our community business owners' pockets. So we're happy about that. But we continue to really push the envelope and come up with new policies and ways that we can create programs, policies, and procedures that will make our spending more robust and really be creative about how we get more businesses, which is really where we find the most tension between where our program needs to grow, more businesses that we can put into the program so that we continue to see growth.
So the spend could easily eclipse 300 billion a year. It's at 150 now, right? Would that hit your 8% or your 10% target? What would be the number?
Al?
What would be the number if you were able to hit your 8% target or your 10?
We would need about another $65 million to get to the 12% growth.
Okay, 12%, great. Listen, any other comments that you want to make? I'm glad that you're here and glad that you're sharing. I want you to keep inviting people to be at your event on Wednesday, October 12th. But what other concerns do you want us to be aware of and to either raise questions or explore for our own edification?
What I want to say is that we have so many opportunities for businesses to do business with the state. We're so proud of the work that we've done, and we really want to continue to grow this program. Anyone who's interested in doing business with the state should reach out to their Office of Equity and Procurement or our Procurement Technical Assistance Center. Our business owners who have had that opportunity really do see the bid matching systems that we use and all of the free services that we offer as beneficial to them. So we're proud of our programs. They get recognition perennially, nationally, for the work that they do. The state of Minnesota has really done a lot of things that are being recognized at a national level because we are, although in our infancy with this program and a lot of work to do, doing a lot of things very well.
Al, can I just jump in here and just say, you know, the work that Commissioner Roberts Davis and her team is doing is super cool, and it's the right type of stuff. So I'll just also make a plug for considering state employment, because you can work on this from the inside and work with really cool people like Alice while you're doing it. So just a plug for state service. It can sound bureaucratic sometimes, but we're really, you know, working on turning the ship.
We're on the same page, Commissioner. I was going to ask you to jump in, and you did. So thank you so much. But I want to bring in Tikki on the same spirit. That Tikki Brown is with the Department of Human Services and, Children and Family Services Assistant Commissioner. Tikki, good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Give us 101 on your organization, its mission, its work.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and really great to be here with Jennifer and Alice, who just props to both of you. It's just doing great work. So I am the Assistant Commissioner for Children and Family Services. That covers childcare programs, child support, economic assistance programs, including the Minnesota Family Investment Program, or MFIB, the SNAP program, or sometimes people call it EBT, child safety and permanency as well. So a lot of programs that support low-income individuals and really form that safety net.
How do the three of you work together? This is off script, but I can't pass up the opportunity to make this a conversation of three powerful women leaders in our state. How do you see yourselves collaborating, working together with your other colleagues, commissioners, assistant commissioners, to move the quality of life, to expand opportunity for all of us, and particularly our people, Black and Brown and Indigenous people? Tikki, you first, and then Alice and Jennifer, jump in where you want to. Let's have the conversation.
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, so a lot of the programs that I represent here with DHS include programs in which we are granting, we have contracts with community partners. And one of my missions has always been to encourage and increase a number of organizations of color and, with our nonprofit grant making. So everything that Commissioner Robert was saying was just exactly what we've been focused on, and she has made it so much easier for us to do that. And so our equity and grant making efforts are incredibly strengthened by the work that she's doing in her office. And then with Commissioner Ho, one of my programs includes some 5 different programs in the area of homelessness. And so again, with her vision and her focus in on justice and equity in this space, our departments work really closely together, really closely with staff, and then really having that holistic approach that we are serving all areas of the population's needs in that space. So I'll stop there.
Homelessness is one space. I mean, the governor and lieutenant governor also have a children's cabinet that brings in all of the agencies with the goal of making Minnesota the best place to raise a kid. And, I think, really understanding the ways in which our different departments contribute to that and how we focus on that, I think is really important. I think we learned a lot about emergency aid through the course of this pandemic. And that's been an area where Minnesota Housing has looked to our friends at the Department of Human Services that do much more direct assistance to just to help us learn and guide us in that work. And I'll ditto that the Department of Admin has helped us with lots of different ways of thinking about procurement. I mean, most recently, one of the things that we've been doing is contracting with people with lived experience of homelessness, any homelessness in their past, to help work with our teams that work on that issue to create a definition of housing justice, racial justice, and health justice that will center and guide our work on ending homelessness, and is really a part of our budget discussions. How do we put together a budget that really has health justice, housing justice, and racial justice, at their core? And so I think the level, I'm on a lot of interagency groups. There's an enterprise-wide group, the Office of Equity and Inclusion. We do work together around people with disabilities. We do work together on climate. We do work together on sustainability. There is so much cross-agency work that's going on. And I always say that the one issue areas are solvable issues. Now, you want the real hard problems, they're the intersectional issues. But that's also where, where it gets fun, because I get to work with people like Tikki and her team.
Tikki, my notes for you talk about, a recent study where SNAP benefits, for example, linked to better health. And you have work that you do with family, friends, and neighbors and childcare grants. Talk about those in particular, and priorities for you going forward.
Right. So I'll speak first to the recent study that our teams put together, and I think I'll link it a little bit to some of the other earlier conversations you had just about the importance of equity and are people getting tired of the conversation? Are they responding well? And I think part of the work that we're doing here within the department is embedding an anti-racism effort throughout every single aspect of our work. And so that includes just continuous education and information that really doesn't allow for maybe a little bit of, feeling like we've heard this before, right? Because I think it just encourages more nuances to the conversation. And so one of those nuances includes what are our evaluation efforts in terms of really digging into the different policies that we have in place, and what are, we all know the disparities that exist. They've existed for a long time, but digging deeper into what are the policy levers that, if we can modify, have an impact on those disparities. So we teamed together with our medical assistance folks and really began to look at a federal policy that allows folks who do not have children to only be on SNAP or EBT for 3 months out of a 36-month time frame. And it's a policy that we are bound to adhere to, because it's a federal policy. We can't modify it or change it. And as we dug into that, we really wanted to find out what are some, beyond anecdotes, what are some real explanations we can have about the cost that it has on our systems. And what it found is that every month that individual is off of SNAP because they've been cut off from that benefit, that very basic need of food, their medical costs increase by $100.
Wow.
So we're not paying, we're not doing the preventative work from the beginning, but we're actually paying for it at the end as well. And so that's
more costs. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we are working, with our congressional delegation. This is a time of year in which there is opportunity to make a pitch to change federal law with the Farm Bill. And so that is one law that we're really advocating should be changed. That doesn't matter if you are with children or without children, you should just be able to have food benefits for as long as you need them. So that's that piece. The other piece I'll just mention briefly too is our family, friends, and neighbors. So this is in the childcare space. And this is really, you probably have heard this as you're out and about in the community, that the workforce situation is pretty difficult, right? And so as we're looking at the childcare situation, it's also difficult. We know that we're both losing childcare providers. It's difficult for folks to find affordable childcare. And so one of the ways we're trying to address that is to look at different populations that can provide childcare, such as family, friends, and neighbors, right? A trusted neighbor, trusted friend, a trusted family member that can receive reimbursement for that care. And so we're expanding that population, trying to get more information about that population who's interested. And then, so we're doing some evaluation in that, and then gradually increasing the investment in that, just to provide an array of childcare options for folks. So no matter where they're at, if they're working, a night shift, if they're working the day shift, they have just some options.
Give me the elevator version of your own career, Commissioner. What's your background, your story?
Yeah, so I've worked at the department for 20 years, so I am a strong believer in state government and would echo Commissioner Ho's, come work for us, come work with us. It's been an interesting career trajectory. I began really focused in on food assistance and food supports. My own childhood experience is that my family utilized many of the same exact programs that I spoke about earlier, and continues to use many of the same programs that I'm working in. And so it's very personal for me.
Are you from Minnesota? Are you a native Minnesotan?
I moved here when I was in 4th grade. I was an Army brat, so we experienced moving many, many places, and then eventually settled here in a rural city. And so
Where's your family from?
My dad was from North Carolina. I was born in an Army base in Kentucky, and my mother actually immigrated here from Finland. So I have a little bit of that immigrant experience.
Okay, great. Let me bring Jeffrey in and we'll wrap it up. Jeff Robinson is a program manager at BuildWealth, and their branded product is something he's co-founder of. That's the 9,000 Equities initiative. And Jeff, thank you for being here. Thank you for the vision, the work of you and the team over at BuildWealth Minnesota. Talk about this great work, this idea of 9,000 Equities, that as a collaborative, and also talk about the upcoming Black Men's Legacy Summit. I think it's going to be presenting on Saturday, October 29th. Jeff, good afternoon. And in the course, speak to all the other things we've talked about over this hour, that you've been a player and participant, actor, commenter on over your career in this community.
And so I'm a transplant here in Minneapolis, Minnesota from Chicago. Moved up here, and actually I came to go to school here at the University of Minnesota Morris. Like most of my friends here in Minnesota, they seek out Black universities to get the Black experience, while I sought out white universities to get the white experience. Because I grew up in an all-Black neighborhood, all-Black family. The only members of my community that were white were either teachers or police officers. And at the end of their shift, they went home. And so, but that's just a little bit about me, Southern boy. I live in North Minneapolis, been in the community for years, working to find a way to make impact in a way that matters from the grassroots level and on up. And David and myself, during the time of George Floyd, we were participating in a training that was offered to us by Prosperity Now to help build high impact nonprofits of color, to strengthen them with the to provide them with the training and the infrastructure to grow their organization, to come to scale, to have a bigger impact. And there were 3 initiatives that David and I had worked on that we wanted as a capstone project for once we came through this training. What were some of the things that we wanted to accomplish? And while we were going through it, we were like, the dial for home ownership is going the wrong way for African Americans. It's, instead of going up, it's now going down. And it was at one point, I believe, when I first moved to Minnesota, I think it was about 29% for the home ownership rate. And at that time, when we came up with the initiative 9,000 Equities, it was at 26%. And when you put a comparative of white ownership versus white renters against in a pie chart against Black owners versus Black renters, they look identical except for 75% of white households are homeowners, whereas 75% of Black households are renters, and 25% of white homeowners are households are renters, and 25% of Black households are owners. And And we were like, okay, so what do we do? I mean, how can we turn the tide? And the 9,000 equities was birthed out of that question, because it's enough is enough. We're tired of not having, or we're tired of the conversations about what is happening versus what is done. And one of the things you had made mention earlier, Al, was you brought up a book, I think White in Plain Sight. I'm not sure the name of it.
Whiteness in Plain View.
Okay, Whiteness in Plain View.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you described that there was, it took a concerted effort comprised of government, private, public institutions with the support of the public to rob us of our wealth. Then it shouldn't be to anyone's surprise that it's going to take a concerted effort of government, private, public institutions with the public support to restore us of our wealth. And so the 9,000 Equities Initiative is a campaign to help 9,000 Black families get into home ownership over the next 5 to 7 years. And this campaign is not something that BuildWealth can take on their own. We're not a big enough institution yet to do that. And so, but to get things that you never had, sometimes you got to do some things that you never done. And so, you can create a goal that may be this big that you can do on your own. But when you create a goal this big, it requires you to seek out other participants who have like-minded interests, like-minded passions, but maybe working for that goal from a different angle to bring to the table, because it's going to take, a great effort on our part and on the parts of others in order to make this happen. We do have an event that's coming up on October 29th, and it's called the Black Men's Legacy Summit. This summit is bringing together members from the religious community, the nonprofit community, the career, health, corporate, and also banking communities to inform and help Black men take their rightful place in building legacies and generational wealth for their families. Al, since we've been doing this work, I want to say about 75% of the people that we've been helping have been Black women, and that's fantastic. That's fantastic, but it begs the question, where are the brothers? Where are the brothers? Where's my brother at? Where's my cousin at? Where's my uncle at? Where are they? And and if they're not here, then how do we get them here? And so the Black Men's Legacy Summit is an effort to get all of the different components to attack this problem from a multifaceted perspective, to get more players. It's not just people from the financial industry. I've been working in the financial industry, the banking industry, for years. I think I started off as an underwriter, a processor, then a mortgage underwriter, then a due diligence underwriter, reviewing mortgage-backed securities for Wall Street investors for years. And I came on to BuildWealth to take the information and the knowledge that I've had helping others build wealth for their families to see what we can do to move the dial in our community.
Commissioners, all three of you, thank you all for being here. I want you to respond because everybody seems to be singing the same song. You're talking about it, Commissioner Alice, from the structure of the government enabling good things to happen in different divisions or departments of the government. Commissioner Brown and Commissioner Ho, you both are doing direct things to create change and opportunity. And it's wonderful to have this conversation with the three of you and with Jeffrey Robertson as well. I'm going to close out with going around the horn and asking each of you to make kind of a closing statement, an impression, a thought, or even a marching order for our community. And how do we go forward? Commissioner Alice, thank you so much. And let me go with you first. Unmute, please. There we go.
Thank you. If you are a business owner or you know a business owner, please do visit the Department of Administration's website and look into how to become a certified business and contact us for further information about how to do business with the state.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner Ho?
I think that if you are needing help because you're behind on your mortgage, I just want to take a moment to say that we have a program called Home Help MN that can help you get caught up if you're behind on your mortgage. And it's a government program with higher income limits than most government programs have. So just go out to homehelpmn.org because we've got some money left, some federal assistance, and we want to help Black homeowners who have a home, who have fallen behind, get caught back up so they can keep that home. So I'll just say that, and I'll just say the other cool thing about working at the state is you get to work with great nonprofit partners, and I really enjoy the relationship we have with BuildWealth, so it's great to be on with Jeffrey.
Commissioner Brown, a closing thought or statement?
Yes, thank you. Just echoing, come work at the state, and even if you're not working at the state, right? We all have a role to play in this. And look on the DHS website in the upcoming days. We are going to be promoting some engagement opportunities. So we can talk about the disparities, talk about the different ways that we want to address them, but we also need help from our community members to help us do that, and we have to do it together. And so we'll have some opportunities in the child welfare space to form an African American Child Wellbeing Advisory Council, and that will be promoted soon on our DHS website, and we look forward to working in partnership with folks on that. Thank you.
Super. Jeffrey, final word for you. Invite people again to your event coming up at the end of the month.
Yes. So for more information regarding the Black Men's Legacy Summit, scheduled for Saturday, October 29th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Regional Acceleration Center, the Thor Building at 1256 Penn Avenue North on the 5th floor, please visit 9000equities.com or call 612-871-9000. That's 612-871-9000.
Listen, this has been a wonderful conversation. Kudos to each of you, to all of you. I want to take a minute to also thank Governor Walz and Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. I think they have in you assembled a phenomenal team of believers, of doers, of visionaries, and of people who serve our state and whose intention is to serve our state in ways it has never been able to before. Hopefully, if all of us get out and vote, our vote can enable these visions to come forth more broadly, more aggressively, and more beneficially to all of us here in the state of Minnesota. We're here every day for the conversation. Please join us. Let people know that you are here, that you're listening. Share, like, subscribe, and be with us. Our goal is to demonstrate how we can be with each other in community. I'm Al McFarland. We'll see you next time. Take care.